for the passion of the home educators that are here. I have for a long time been a champion of school choice. I think school choice is the civil rights issue of the 21st century. And I want to salute the incredible leadership of the men and women in this room protecting the right of every parent to choose and to guide the education of your children, to take the responsibility of nurturing your children up to walk in faith, to walk in your values. I want to say, secondly, thank you to everyone here for your incredible commitment to religious liberty. The past couple of weeks have been heartbreaking as we've watched what's happened in Indiana and Arkansas. We've seen religious liberty under assault. I'm proud to be with these three gentlemen on the stage, all of whom have been tremendous advocates of religious liberty. And I am looking forward to our having a robust conversation this afternoon about the incredible need for us to come together, get back to what used to be a bipartisan consensus in favor of the First Amendment, in favor of religious liberty. We are a nation that was founded by men and women fleeing religious persecution and coming to seek out a land where we could seek out and worship the Lord God Almighty with all of our hearts, minds, and souls, free of the government. And never has that been more threatened and more in need of leadership than right now. And I thank each and every one of you for your powerful leadership in support of religious liberty.
Governor Huckabee.
Well, thank you very much, Steve, and thank all of you for giving up your afternoon to be here. I know that many of you spent the morning out there at the Capitol, probably getting inspired to want to run for the state legislature after seeing all the dynamic activity that was going on. The one thing that I think I dreaded more than anything else about being governor was when the legislature came to town. I always said that being governor was a great job until you had to deal with the legislature. But it's the way the founders envisioned things, that law couldn't be made by one of the three branches of government. Then it took all three. We're living in a time where some people, unelected, wearing black robes, believe that they can just make law and impose it on the other two branches and upon you. They can't. That is not part of the Constitution or part of the tradition. And one of the reasons that the homeschool movement has become important is because I'm convinced that a lot of the parents who are homeschooling their children are actually making sure their children grow up knowing what America truly is, what it was created to be, and what it should be, what it still has to be if we're going to preserve this great republic. When I became governor, I had about 1,200 appointments a year. Every year I appointed somebody to the State Board of Education. The first appointment that I made to the State Board of Education in Arkansas was a homeschool mom. It was the first time in all of America that a homeschool parent had ever been appointed to a State Board of Education. Wasn't exactly that popular with the teachers' unions. Wasn't very popular with the educrats. But she became an incredibly valuable part of the State Board, representing an incredibly valuable and growing constituency in our state, your state, and all across America. And the primary reason that I think all of us are here today is because I think we share this view, that ultimately the decision for your children's education is not in the hands of the government. It is in the hands of the mothers and fathers who are not only responsible for bringing the children into the world, but who are responsible for training their replacements. And I'm delighted to be with you today. I look forward to a wonderful exchange. All the hard questions will go to any of these other gentlemen. I'll take the easy ones. That's the way we've all planned it, and I appreciate your adherence to that. Thank you very much.
Governor Jindal.
Thank you. I want to, first of all, thank the moms and dads here. I want to thank you for investing the time in raising your children. The time you're investing in your sons and daughters is a gift not only to them, but to us as well. We're the beneficiaries of that. You know, Timmy Teeple, he's been my campaign manager, he's been my chief of staff, many of my senior aides. He's been homeschooled, so I know firsthand how important this sacrifice is. I know many choose to homeschool because you want to share our Christian faith with your children. You want to teach them and raise them according to our values. I too am alarmed by the assault on religious liberty we're seeing not just in Arkansas and Indiana, but across our country. We saw a very unusual alliance this week. We saw an alliance between Hollywood elites and corporate America, assaulting the rights of Christians who don't want to have to choose between our faith, our sincerely held beliefs, and our ability to run our businesses. We need to remind these elites, America did not create religious liberty. Religious liberty created the United States of America, and it is the reason we're here today. I close with a final observation. When we fought for school choice in Louisiana so the dollars follow the child, instead of making the child follow the dollars, a teacher union leader had the audacity to say this. He got up and said that parents don't have a clue when it comes to making choices for their children. Most offensive thing I've heard during that debate. We won the debate, but I met with a group of moms the next day at the mansion that said, Governor, we make choices for our kids every day. We know the needs of our kids better than those bureaucrats in Baton Rouge or Washington, D.C. I would never bet against moms and dads. This debate is really about one simple truth. Moms and dads know the needs of their kids better than any government bureaucrat anywhere in America. Thank you all very much for listening.
Senator Santorum. Thank you, Steve. It is great to be here with my fellow homeschooling moms and dads. Karen and I homeschooled for 19 years. We were pioneers back, now almost 22 years ago, when we started homeschooling, and we had to fight the bureaucracy. I know firsthand, having to fight in the state of Pennsylvania and the teachers union, which I know they're strong here, but they're really strong in Pennsylvania in both political parties. And the homeschooling laws in Pennsylvania are some of the worst in the country. And we had to stand up and fight against them. So I know this battle not just from a public policy point of view, but from trying to make sure that my children got the education that we believe as parents were best for them. In the end, that's what the goal of our educational system has to be. You folks are pioneers. You're pioneers who set an example as to what is necessary to transform education. We don't need educational standards or Common Core to tell America how to educate our children. We need parents to be intricately involved in the decisions as to what is best for their children. There are two books that were just published recently. One by a man by the name of Charles Murray, who's on the right, a libertarian. Another by the name of Robert Putnam, who's on the left. And both of them came down and talked about the criticality of education. But the biggest factor influencing the success or failure of children in schools is not the teachers, is not the funds in the classroom, is not the hardware or software, but it's parental involvement. It's parents that are the key. We don't have a 50% dropout rate because Common Core isn't in every high school. We have kids failing, our society not living up to its hopes and dreams because we are not empowering and engaging parents. You are the example. That's why I stand shoulder to shoulder with you. That's why I believe so much in what you're doing. And that's why we're going to make sure that you have control of the educational system in our country from here on out.
So we'll start here in section 1. My daughter is in the back. We'll go back and forth between the front and the back. If you have a question for the candidates, raise your hand. We'll spend 15 minutes in each section. I'll begin with sort of an icebreaker, and then after that, the floor is yours. So let's start with a simple question that sometimes seems to trip up people running for office. Why do each of you want to be president? Senator Santorum, we'll start with you.
The reason I want to be president is, first off, I haven't announced anything yet, so I just want to say that. The reason I ran for president last time, the reason I'm considering running, right? So we all have to say, right? That's a free man. But the reason I ran last time, the reason I'm looking at it this time, is because our country is in serious problem. They need leadership that's principled, authentic, and can bring America together. When I was running last time around, I went out and talked about how we had to unite America around a common economic theme, and to talk about helping those folks in the middle who were struggling, being left behind, that neither party really cared about or talked about. So I talked about bringing back vocational education in our schools and doing things to train the 75% of Americans who don't have a college degree, giving them the opportunity to rise, deal with that issue that's real about the lack of opportunity for folks to be able to rise in America and the income inequality which is exacerbated after President Obama. Someone who can unite the country around a common vision for the economy and looking at 2016, who has the experience, the knowledge, and has been tested. I think as we saw from the last couple of weeks on the issue of religious liberty, it's one thing to say that you're conservative, and there's one thing to be in a firestorm, be attacked. You find out how tough they really are. Ladies and gentlemen, for 13 years, those folks have been attacking me, haven't backed off an inch, and like many up here, have done so in a positive, uplifting way about how we can bring America together. Not mean, not condemnatory, but try to bring people together so we can have a tolerant, truly tolerant, healthy, vibrant society. Finally, the National Security Fund is so important. It's so important to have someone with experience. In all likelihood, you'll be going up against a former Secretary of State. You know, it's one thing to challenge someone who's got that long track record. But when they push back, if your experience in national security is the briefing book before the debate, you're going to see what happened the last debate. You back off because of the experience. Experience matters, vision matters, and that's what I think our country is looking for. Authentic, honest leadership that can bring us together and paint a positive vision for the future.
If I were to run, it would be for one simple reason. I'm worried about the damage that President Obama has done to our country. Now, there's a lot that he has done that can be reversed. You can reverse higher tax rates, you can reverse Obamacare, you can reverse the EPA trying to strangle our economy. But President Obama is in the process of trying to redefine the idea of America and the American dream. I'm blessed. I've lived the American dream. My dad's one of 9, the only one that got past the 5th grade. My brother and I, my parents sacrificed so we could have opportunities that my mom and he could only dream about. I don't know about you, but I want my children and one day my grandchildren to have those same opportunities. We've got an administration that is bankrupting our country at home and abroad. We absolutely need to rebuild the ladder so that our children, if they work hard, they get an education, they can enter the middle class. The American dream is not about redistribution or government spending or borrowing or taxes. The American dream is the circumstances of your birth don't determine your outcomes as an adult. So here at home, we've actually spent the last year and a half thinking of detailed policy ideas about what the next president needs to do. We don't need just a Republican in the White House. We need a conservative that's going to make big changes. We need an outsider that's going to go to D.C., not make incremental changes, but make big changes to get our country back on the right path. I think our best days are still ahead of us, not behind us, but I don't think it's inevitable. I think if we don't make the right choices in this generation, we can be the first that mortgages our children's future. Abroad, the dangers are almost as great, if not greater. Yes, we need to confront the threat of ISIS and radical Islamic terrorism. And boy, wouldn't it be nice if we had a president that could actually say those words, radical Islamic terrorism. He has no problem warning us about medieval Christians and the Crusades. No problem criticizing Christians at the National Prayer Breakfast or again during Easter. But won't identify the enemy we face, for which an even greater threat is the prospect of a nuclear-armed Iran. That's an existential threat not just to Israel and to Europe, but ultimately to America. We've got a president who's doing everything he can to undermine and alienate our closest ally in the Middle East, Israel, while at the same time potentially leaving as his legacy, his foreign policy legacy, a less stable, an arms race in the Middle East, a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. So if I were to run for president, the only reason anybody should think about running for president at this moment in our country's history is realizing that we are called to make big changes and restore that American dream for our next generation. I'm grateful for this country, the opportunities that I've been afforded, and I want to make sure we're not the last generation. to enjoy the ability to get up every day in the greatest country in the history of the world, thanks to the grace of God Almighty.
Like several others on the panel, I have to begin by telling you, if I run for president, that's not just a matter of rhetoric, it's a matter of making sure we fulfill the legal requirements to get ourselves in trouble. Why would anybody run for president? It could be ego, it could be that a person just has an outside view of himself that is bigger than life. But I can tell you, having done this before, if there's some glory in running for president, it disappears in about 15 minutes. And then it becomes incredibly gruesome. People have asked me, what's it like to run for president? I said, well, have you ever imagined sticking your face in the blades of a fast-moving fan? Because that's a pretty good description of the experience. So doing it once, well, you can forgive a guy for that. Doing it twice, you have to figure he's either really full of himself or he truly loves this country. And he truly believes that he can bring something to this country to provide leadership that would get us back on the track that would make us the greatest nation on earth once again. And anything less than that is unacceptable. I don't believe you can explain America apart from the providence of God. I don't think it's possible to even understand this country unless you believe that God intervened in the lives of those early founders who got on their knees to ask his help and then got on their feet to fight, taking weapons off their mantle that were better suited for hunting rabbits than it was to take on the British Army, but they did it. Miraculously, they didn't just survive, they won. And they won something for all of us. They won liberty, they won freedom, they won the right of a nation to be sovereign and to be safe and secure. But I look at what's happened in this country over the past few years. We're not the safe, sovereign nation that we once were. Trading away our very authority to the United Nations and to international panels, are subjugating all of the branches of government to uniquely the executive branch because the president decides that he's got a pen and a phone. And he fails to understand that he also has a constitution that he swore to uphold. We have to come back to the place where we respect that document that gives us our charter and that really gives us our freedom and our framework. I'm also convinced that I hear Washington always talk about how the economy is in recovery. But you know what? When I talk to people who sweat through their clothes every day, people who come home so dirty from work, lifting heavy things and working hard, they have to take a shower before their wife will let them sit at the table. When I talk to people like that, I don't hear people say, boy, the economy is recovering. I talk to people that today have 2 jobs with no benefits who just a few years ago had 1 job with benefits. And the harder they work, the more that they can do for their family. Today, the harder they work, they're just hoping to stay where they were, not where they want to be. And that's happened because we have a government that has gotten so big and so intrusive that has punished the people who want to work and rewarded the people who didn't. You cannot build an economy like that. You can't have a great nation when we don't recognize that we are at war, not with just some empty ideology, but with a religious fanaticism that is determined to take every one of us to our grave. And any naivete about being able to sit down and make nice with radical jihad is to the detriment and danger of your children and grandchildren. And we cannot, as a nation, sit back and continue in the process where we are right now, which is that under the last administration, I've challenged many of my Democrat friends, and I actually have a few. Please don't hold that against me, but I actually do have a few. I've asked you this question: can you name one country on the planet, just one, with whom we have a better relationship now than we did when he took office 6 years ago? And even the most adamant Obama supporters can't name one, because there isn't one. Some of them will jokingly say, Iran. But it's not funny. Because Iran is not a nation with whom we have a better relationship. We have been sucker punched into believing that they're going to keep a deal when they've never kept one else. My first trip to Israel was in 1973 when I was all of 17 years old. I've been to virtually every country in the Middle East and countries all over the world. And I've never seen so much anxiety on the parts of our allies because our friends no longer trust us and our enemies no longer fear us. If I run for president, it's because I believe we not only can reverse the course of this nation, but we must. I think there's some good men here at this table. I don't pretend that I'm better than any of them. I want you to pretend that I'm better than all of them. But whoever of us, or one of the many others considering running for president, is fortunate enough to get your support, we cannot allow another 8 years of the course we are on now. We must make a course correction for your children and your grandchildren's future. Thank you very much.
I'm running for president because our country's in crisis. Because we cannot continue on the path we're on. I'm running for the same reason every one of us is here today. Because we love our kids. Because we're worried about the world that our kids and our grandkids are inheriting. This next election, it's now or never. I believe if we have 4 or 8 more years on this current road, we risk doing irreparable damage to the greatest nation in history of the world. And we need a leader who can stand up with a smile and defend the free market principles and the constitutional liberties that have made America great. For 6 years, we've been trapped in stagnation. Out of control spending and taxes and regulation, they don't work, and millions of Americans are hurting. We got to get back to the free market principles. We got to get back to tax reform. We need to adopt a simple flat tax and abolish the IRS. We need to get regulators out of small businesses so they can create jobs, so that young people coming out of school can have opportunities, can have a brighter future. And the most important regulatory reform, we need to repeal every word of Obamacare. We need to defend our constitutional liberties. We have never seen a federal government coming after the Bill of Rights, coming after our free speech rights, our religious liberty, our Second Amendment, our privacy, the 10th Amendment. We need to stand up and repeal every word of Common Core. And we need to restore America's leadership in the world. For 6 years, we've seen the Obama-Clinton foreign policy of leading from behind. And it doesn't work. Instead of a president who boycotts Prime Minister Netanyahu, imagine America standing unapologetically with the nation of Israel. We need a commander-in-chief who will stand up and in no uncertain terms say, we will defeat radical Islamic terrorism. And under no circumstances will Iran be allowed to acquire nuclear weapons. None of this will come from Washington. Washington is broken. Trust me, I've seen it firsthand. Change will only come from the men and women here. It will only come from millions of courageous conservatives rising up to hold elected officials, Democrats, and Republicans accountable. And what we've got to do is we've got to bring back the old Reagan coalition. We've got to bring together conservatives and libertarians and evangelicals and young people and women and Hispanics and Reagan Democrats behind shared values. Many of you have gotten to know my father, Pastor Rafael Cruz. 58 years ago, my dad was imprisoned and tortured in Cuba. And when he fled Cuba, when he came to America, This land offered him the freedom that it has offered every one of our families. When I was a kid, over and over again, my father used to ask me, he would say, when we faced oppression in Cuba, I had a place to flee to. If we lose our freedom here, where do we go? That's why I'm running for president, because like the men and women in this room, and like the men on this stage, none of us are willing to go quietly in the night. None of us are willing to give up on this country. We believe if the American people rise up, we can get back to the principles that made America strong. Thank you.